Today on Simply Happy Conversations, I'm talking with Elaine, and she is from Impact Parents, a resource for parenting neurodiverse kids. And she's also an author and a podcast host of the Parenting with Impact with Diane Dempster. And it's a great podcast. I highly recommend. There's so many episodes with fantastic tips. And today she'll be helping us with procrastination and neurodiversity. Welcome, Elaine.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to be able to talk to you face to face because I do listen to your podcast and I love all the tips that you both share and the guests that you also have on. So if you were, just so people can get to know you a little bit, if they've never heard of your podcast before or your website, if you were a Barbie doll, what 2 accessories would you come with? What are some of your interests and things you like to do outside of work?
Well, it changes. I think if I were, what accessories would I come with? That's such a hard one. I think that, so today I'm about to start my very first ceramics class. So today my Barbie would come with like a clay print and some ceramics tools, some art tools, which might not be usual for me, but it's a big stretch and I'm excited about it.
Oh, that sounds fun. So you haven't done it before?
I haven't done it since I was a teenager.
Oh, wow.
So I'm really excited. And then I think probably there would always be a journal or a pen or some way, or a computer, some way for me to write.
Yeah.
I love to write.
So how many books at the moment do you have out? Is it 3, 2?
There are 3 or 4.
3 or 4,
I think one's not in print right now. But and then if you add ebooks on top of that or article, like I've been a very prolific writer. I love to write. It's kind of my therapy. It's kind of how I process what's going on in my world.
Yeah. And so many people do use writing to process the things that are going on. So it's a great tool, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Or it is for me.
And so if I was able to come over to your place and help you organize, what would be an area in your home that you need organizing? Or it might not even be physical. It might be like admin or photos or something like that.
So when will you get here? And I think there's 2. Personally, it would definitely be photos. I used to have my photos so well organized, and then some computer transition or other, probably 15 years ago, I lost all the folders and the files, and it's just never been redone. So probably that would be personally. And then I think professionally, or like in terms of navigating my life, it would be helping me manage email and time management around email, which is a constant source of struggle. And I even have a team member whose job is to clear out my emails before I get there. And it's still so much time spent on email.
It is, isn't it? It's I think that's ongoing for everyone. And the same with photos too. I don't know if it's also because of the cloud when we changed over and the cloud then came, that's where I find I'm missing a lot of photos as well.
Yeah. I suspect they're there. They're just terribly organized, so you can't find them. And then there's like, the 30 photo albums from before 2001. That
you'd probably love to scan some of those photos to keep as well and have a digital copy of them as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is so time consuming, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a nice idea. One day, right?
One day.
All of those one day things that will happen.
Yeah. There's so many steps in that though, isn't there? That's why I'm sure, which leads us into procrastination. So for neurodiverse teens or children, what do you find is it shows up? How does it show up with them? So procrastination.
Well, so procrastination is interesting because I don't think we understand it really well. And it's kind of nuanced. So a lot of things can lead to procrastination. Let's start with the assumption that you're only procrastinating if you intend to do it in the first place. So a lot of people think, or parents will call out kids for procrastinating when they're not really procrastinating. They're just not doing it, which is not quite the same thing. So that's one whole kind of category. But when we're really procrastinating, it's usually because of one of 2 key things. Usually it's because either there's some ambiguity involved. So we don't know where to start or what's involved or how big it is or how long it's going to take or who else is going to need to be involved or exactly what needs to be done. So if we're not clear enough, sometimes that will lead us to procrastinate, to just kind of put it off because there's just, it's too much mental effort to figure it out, right? And the other thing I think that can really, and so a lot of my clients, you'll hear them say from me, is ambiguity will shut me down. If I'm ambiguous, if I'm not clear, it's going to shut me down, and I'll kick the can down the road. I'll do something else.
And that's what I hear from clients as well.
A lot,
that's
right?
The adult clients, that's exactly what it'll be, because there's just
many
But
helping
steps.
to understand the ambiguity can really help. Like when you understand, oh, there's something not clear here. Let me get clear on it. When it's amazing how once you get clear on it, how much easier it is to get activated and get started. The other thing I think that can shut people down is sometimes people procrastinate because it's boring. Because it's just like, I don't feel like doing the laundry, unloading the dishwasher, like taking the car to get gas, whatever it is. I don't feel like it. It's boring. This is more compelling. This is more interesting in front of me right now. This is what I want to focus on. So I think those are the two big reasons for procrastination. I think a third I might add is that it kind of ties into the ambiguity. If our brain's kind of not ready to do it, sometimes we have to clean out the sock drawer to be able to write a paper. We have to get our brain in an organizing space to be able to do the harder thing. And so sometimes cleaning our room is not actually procrastination. It's, my husband would call it procrastivity, right? It's productive. It's a little bit of procrastinating, but it's also getting your brain kind of in gear and ready.
Yeah, definitely. I know when I was a teacher and I'd have to write school reports, I would need to clean the house first before I could sit to write. That movement would help my brain get ready.
I have a colleague who's a psychologist who loves testing kids and hates writing the reports. And so her procrastination was video games. This is a grown adult, 20 years ago. And she would do the video game first to get herself kind of geared up to then be able to sit and write the report.
But it's when you understand that it helps to relieve those, like the guilt and the shame. I'm not doing it. I should be doing this sort of feelings, and understanding it. Why?
Well, it goes back to the intention. If I really do intend to do it, then I have to understand it well enough to be able to figure out how to help myself be successful in doing it.
Yeah.
If I'm not really intending to, or I don't believe I can, or I'm not sure I can, that's where I think a lot of the guilt and shame comes in, because then it becomes a should. And if it's a should, it's an expectation. And it's very often somebody else's expectation, or it's something we've taken on as our own expectation, but we're really not 100% committed to it. If we're 100% committed to it, then and we're willing to get some help, we can actually figure out how to get it done. But it's that sort of gray area between I feel like I should do it is not the same thing as saying, okay, I'm going to do this thing. Right.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, because I find clients will maybe be watching you for a while and understanding what you do. And then, like, I even had one the other day who's been following me and from 2018 and only now, so that's 2025, reached out and to work together. So it took her that long, but she's like, oh my gosh, now that you've been, I'm on a roll. So yeah, it's interesting how it does take people a long time to get to that point.
I hear that from parents a lot, that, we see parents who've been in our community for 2, 4, 6, 8 years before they're finally like, okay, I got to admit, because I think what we're not talking about, but the truth of what you and I were just speaking to is it's hard to ask for help. It's hard to admit that there might be a need for help. I don't want to need help. I'm afraid I might not be successful with help. There's all this stuff around that asking for help that I think also shuts people down and prevents us from getting the support we really need.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the board part with, in particular, kids and teens? Because I think the other thing at the moment, because we're about to go back into like a new school year. So my work is a lot around going into families' homes and organizing, but with the child, because it's like the parents are saying they don't ever clean their room. They don't do this. It's like, okay, hang on, we've got to simplify this. But they go, the kids are so honest and will just go, it's just really boring. Yes, I know it would be. So yeah, maybe talk a little bit and maybe some strategies around helping to alleviate that boredness.
Well, so I think first of all, let's just acknowledge that some of the stuff we're talking about is boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we can even just acknowledge it to them, like you just said, it's like as parents, we feel like we're not supposed to admit it. But if we could say to our kid, look, I know cleaning your room is so boring. Would you like some company? Would you like some help? Like, okay, how can we make it fun? If we acknowledge that boredom is real, and we know that especially neurodiverse kids, all kids, but especially neurodiverse kids, really need something to stimulate the brain, to get the brain activated, that it's not enough. We joke at Impact that some people have a just get it done button and some people don't. I'm an adult with ADD. I do not have a just get it done button. If I want to get something done, I got to find a motivation for it. I got to find a reason for like what's in it for me. I got to commit to it, set the intention. I got to activate. I got to get supports in place. I got to, there's all these pieces. I got to finish this before I can start that. And so when something's boring, even if it works great, but it's boring, like some of the best systems I've had, once they get too boring, I'm going to change to another system, even if it worked, because I need to keep it novel. Some of us are highly motivated by novelty and change. Like my joke, and this is true, Narelle, I keep 3 toothbrushes, actually 2 now, toothbrushes and 3 toothpastes in my bathroom drawer. So every day it's a kind of a roulette game of what's the toothpaste going to be. And it keeps it just novel enough for me to not be so bored with brushing my teeth. Right? No, that sounds crazy.
No,
but
not
those
at all.
little things, making it fun, throwing clothes into the hamper instead of putting them neatly in. Anything that we can do to make things fun or engaging or novel or interesting, little healthy fun competition, not stressful competition. All of these ways to activate the brain, to get a little dopamine going, can be really powerful to get stuff done. I have a great teenager story. You want to hear it?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay. This is about a dozen years ago. My oldest kid was about 18 and 3 kids. And I needed them. There had been a death in the family and we needed them to go to the grocery store and take care of some stuff so we adults could have some conversations. Right. And I needed them to. It was not but I knew that I have 3 neurodiverse kids. And so I looked at my kids. I'm like, I know that you don't want to go to the grocery store any more than I do. And I'm really asking you, would you please do this for all of us? We'll make dinner. We really need you to do this. And they looked at me. My eldest looked at me, looked at the kids, looked at me, looked at the kids, looked back at me and said, okay. And then looked at their siblings and said, all right, everybody, superheroes to the grocery store. And they put on capes and tights and shorts over the tights in December. And they played their way to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Because they knew it needed to be done. And they had to kind of give it a little fun and novelty and play to be able to get themselves activated to do it. And it worked.
Oh, that's such a great story. Yes, it is, isn't it? It's that gamification or role playing that really helps to activate the brain, doesn't it?
And I could have been really, don't do that. This is, it's disrespectful at this time. But it's like, okay, if that's what it's going to take, thank you. Go. Great.
Yeah, no, that's a great story. And that is, the same. I love gamification with kids. Like, how about you go into the bed, you've got to try and get as many things as you can, and I have to guess what they are, and then you can throw them out to me. There's so many little games that I love to play with kids, but I think it's like teaching the parents as well around, they can be fun. It doesn't have to be serious as well. Depends on
a lot of our work. Most of our work is about, you think it's about your kid, but it's really about you.
Yeah.
And if you can get your head around what's going on and you can get yourself out of the way and play a little bit or lighten up or let go or whatever it is that your family dynamic needs, when we focus on us as parents and we learn to respond to what's going on instead of being reactive, it changes everything because it builds the relationship and it builds the trust. And
Mm.
that really what's going to help our kids get motivated is when they feel safe and they feel trusted and trusting.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also about our own parenting. How were we parented? And it's, changing those styles because parenting has changed so much over the last 20, 30 years, hasn't it?
Oh my goodness. I was talking to a parent, one of our parenting groups yesterday, just about this topic about, we forget sometimes the world that we're raising these kids in and how different it is and how complicated it is. And can you imagine what it would have been like if you've been trying to get your school assignments done and your homework done when there was a cell phone sitting right there and all of the social stuff happening that you weren't part of and social media. And like, there's so much bombarding them all the time. We can't compare the world we were raised in to the world they're in. They're completely different worlds. And it's complicated. This is a hard world for these kids to be growing up in. They need our compassion and support around that instead of our judgment that, why can't you just,
Yeah, that's a great one. Why can't you just? That was definitely something that we would have heard 20 years ago. Yeah. So if you were to give some practical strategies to tackle procrastination, what would be some of your ideas? Maybe also around breaking them down for, I suppose, the clean the room, or what's another one? Oh, do your homework is another one I think I hear a lot about.
Morning. All those are so big. So,
Yes.
So that's great. So two things. First of all, when there's procrastination, is get clear on the problem you're really trying to solve. Is it really about boredom? Is it really about not having clarity on what the pieces are? Before you put a solution in place, you got to spend a little time getting curious on what's the real problem you're trying to solve, because we very often are solving the wrong problem. Okay, so that's the first thing I would say. Once you're clear, let's say that it's ambiguity or it's confusion or it's just a big project. As you say, breaking it down, the language we use from the coaching world is take aim. Take aim on one thing at a time, make it really specific and really clear. And as parents and adults, we want to take aim on one area where the kid is taking more independence. And we're going to continue to scaffold and support all the other things so that they know that their independence this week, they're working on feet on the floor when the alarm goes off, or teeth brushed by 7:30, or dressed in at the breakfast table by 7:50, or whatever it is. It's being very specific and to the extent you can to time and place of what the expectation is, that it's that narrow that you can do that and feel the success and acknowledge the success. So if it's cleaning the room, it might be just the top drawer or just the surface of that cabinet or just the bathroom counter, so that it's doable and you can see the benefit, the result, and you can feel the success of it, because success is going to bring more success. So we have this tendency to make things so big. Let's take care of mornings. Let's do homework. Well, there are a million steps involved with those two things. So let's focus on what's the one area that our kid wants to be more independent in. What's in it for them to be more independent in getting started, sticking with the homework, going back after a break, not getting distracted, getting it put in the backpack, getting it turned in. What's the one thing? And we can support the rest while they're practicing and getting acknowledged and rewarded and good feedback for whatever that one thing is that they're working on, so that they're clear what they're working on.
That's great. And great point I like about that you support them as well. So it's not just them trying to do it all by themselves. It's actually, seeing, okay, they're doing that part. I'm going to help them over here.
So here's an example. I've got a kid who's studying for a major, major, major exam right now, kid in medical school. And we were talking the other day, and she's working really, really hard, right? And she's like, and I don't have time to do my laundry, and I can't plan my food. And I was like, would you like me to do your laundry? Now she's a young adult, right? And really, you would do that? Yeah. And it's, of course, the least I could do is do her laundry while she's doing all this studying and working so hard on this other thing. There's nothing, I'm not enabling her by doing that. I'm supporting her and helping set her up for success, because right now her bandwidth is limited. and her capacity to do it all is limited. So let's let her focus on the most important thing. And I'm happy to come in and support with the rest and invite her over for dinner or whatever it is, so that to reduce the stress in the other areas. And I think that's the thing, is like, we expect our kids, we want to hold them accountable to the outcome. And what we really need to do is hold them accountable to the steps of the process along the way, right? It's not, did you get an A on that test? It's, are you doing what you need to do to study for that test? And how can I support you, make sure you have good, healthy dinner so that you can have the time to study, right? That is because to do well on that test, you have to not just study for the test, but you got to get some sleep, and you got to eat, and you got to, make sure you're drinking water. There's all these pieces that are involved with being healthy enough to be able to succeed on that test. So we can support some areas and allow them to take the lead on the areas that they really need to work on at that moment.
Yeah, that's a great example. And I love, obviously, you have a great relationship from the sounds of that, to be able to be open enough to say, yeah, what sort of support would you like there? So if families have children, what's sort of a great way around problem solving? Because I know for some families I work with in particular, because a lot of them are neurodiverse, is the child may shut down. So there's like not a lot of verbal communication. What's a great way of working out to problem solve with them? I mean, they get mean sometimes, and that helps really well because it's someone new, but what's some other ways that they could problem solve together?
So it's a great question, Narelle. And I would say it's kind of hard for me to answer, because everything we do at Impact Parents is about teaching parents how to problem solve.
Yeah.
So for my lens, it's taking a coach approach. It's learning how to be more coach-like, to be more collaborative, to have conversations a little differently in a way that our kids feel empowered, where it's strength-based, so our kids see that we believe what they can do instead of what they can't do. There's a lot of pieces that go into to really supporting them in being successful for themselves. And so what we want to focus on with our kids is being in this process of problem solving all the time. But it's not solving the problem for them, which we kind of have a tendency to do, right? I think you should use this planner. I think you should take this thing. I think you should, if you're starting with, I think you should, you're not problem solving, you're directing. So we want to get out of the habit of directing and move more into collaboration, where we're saying, well, what do you see as your options? What do you think you might try? What's available to you? How many different things are in the, like, maybe what are the obstacles in the way, or what are your strengths right now, or what's worked for you in the past? Or there are a million questions you could ask. But if you shift out of directing and into collaborating, then you can walk kids through the process of problem solving so that they're figuring out that they have the capacity to figure it out. But what happens with teenagers is, if we keep giving them the answer, or giving them what we think the answer should be, which is our answer, at some point they stop trying. Because why should they bother? Because they're not going to do it the way you think they should, and therefore they're not going to be doing it right anyway. And that could show up as the way they don't load the dishwasher, or the way they don't do their laundry, or the way they don't do it. Doesn't matter what it is. At some point, they stop trying because they figure it doesn't matter. Nothing I do is really going to be good enough. So we have to be careful not to micromanage, and to really empower them through thinking it through and allowing them to come up with ideas we wouldn't have come up with, even if we're pretty sure it's not going to work. It's okay that it's not going to work, because if we can stay on their team, and it's like, well, you tried that. How'd it work? Didn't work. All right. Well, what'd you learn from it? Like, be with them and support them in learning how to problem solve, instead of trying to make sure they get the right answers.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I find that's one of the things that when I go into a family and work with a child, it's problem solving, because I don't know the child, or know anything about them. And one of the things I love to say is, we can move this room around, but we can always change it. If it doesn't work this way,
Right.
we can move. It's not stuck in stone. And I think that really helps. And it just plays into what you were just talking about there, about
Well,
being
and the other
curious.
thing, when you're working with their kids, if the parents could take something like Sanity School and learn to begin to communicate
Yes.
differently, right? And it's not that we're doing it wrong. We just were raised in a different time. And as we just spoke to, now we're raising kids in a time where they have the whole world at their fingertips. They have a different kind of relationship with adults, because the adults are like they're their own reality peer group in a different way than they were when we were kids.
Mm.
And so we need to teach to talk with them as if they're independent human beings.
Yeah.
And empower their capacity instead of trying to control their behavior.
And I think that schools are doing a great job at changing that way as well, and using that curious coaching, way of, okay, what are we going to do? They'll give you the theory or the information, but it's like the child is then empowered to go and be curious and come up with their own discovery around whatever the topic is, which I think is great that we're moving that way with education as well.
I agree. It is happening better in schools because we're talking about creating accommodated environments at schools. And what I'm talking about, I think, is creating an accommodated environment at home, teaching parents how to create an accommodated environment at home that really sets their kids up for success.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. That is exactly what you're doing. That is your job, all summarized there, what you're both doing. So if people wanted to connect with you, what is the best way for people to connect with yourself? And I will put links in their show notes as well. So
thank you. Well, there are a huge amount of resources at impactparents.com. If you go to impactparents.com/podcast, you can access our podcast, Parenting with Impact. And if you're listening to this podcast, you probably like podcasts. So we invite you to join us there. And then there's free downloads and gifts and hundreds of blogs and all kinds of amazing resources. Impact Parents has been a website since 2011. So there's tons of resources and insights and tips and guest expert posts and all kinds of great stuff there.
Yeah, thank you.
The events page has got all the good stuff that's coming up too.
It's coming up. Yes, fantastic. And you have a lot of information of places to go for people as well. And just guests that you've connected with, I think is great as well, because that's where my network has moved out from listening to your podcast and hearing about a guest and then following that person. So thank you for continuing to share the information that you learn yourself and the people you connect with. And thank you for your time today, Elaine.
Truly my pleasure. Thank you for having me and for doing this. It's always so powerful to have these conversations. So thank you.
Definitely.